Okay, so adding and subtracting polynomials. So the first slide is all these things, and I do have a copy of these for you guys, so but you will need to know this stuff to do the assignment. So the whole deal with polynomials, this is asking if things are polynomials. Really the only things that make them not polynomials is if you have something like x to the c, because we don't know what c is. It could be a negative exponent or things that we just can't have there. Also, you couldn't have like x to the negative 3, because then that would bring it through the magic bar, and you cannot have a denominator that is a variable. So when we talk about the degree of polynomial, it's asking for the entire thing, and you just count how many there are. So if it's a monomial, it's 1. If it's a binomial, it's 2. And if it's a trinomial, it's 3. Anything above 3 is just going to simply be called a polynomial. Then we have the degree of the monomial, which means we're just talking about the very first term when these are put in standard form. And depending on what the exponent is, it tells you what degree it is. So we will start here. So 4y minus 5, that doesn't have any weird exponents or anything. So yes, this is a polynomial, and we're only going to explain why they're not. So then we look at this first term, and it's an understood 1. So then we come up here to our monomial chart, and a degree 1 is linear. So a degree 1 equals linear. So the actual answer is linear, but I like to connect 1 and linear in my head so that I start memorizing them. Then the degree of the polynomial is simply how many terms are there. So we've got 1, 2, so that would be a binomial. So over here we're going to write binomial. And just so you know, these two columns, they're not connected to each other. So if you have something that's linear, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's binomial. So they're not connected in answers. So then we have the negative 6.5. And while that may seem like it's not a polynomial, there's nothing weird like this. So yes, it is a polynomial. Then if you look here, there's no variable. And so we call anything without a variable like this a constant. So if you look at the degree of the monomial chart, the constant is a degree 0. So we're going to put a degree 0. And then there's actually only one term, so it's going to be a monomial. Then here, this one's a little tricky. You cannot have a negative exponent because it brings it down to the bottom of a fraction, or it makes it go into the denominator. So this is a no. And once you have a no here, you cannot do these. Then the last one is kind of a trick one, because these two terms actually need to be put together first because they are the same x's, just plain x's. So this turns into 6x to the third plus 5x plus 3. So this is a yes, and now we only have 3 terms. So we can go ahead and do the degree of the polynomial, which is trinomial. Then looking back, our highest exponent is 3, so we'll come up here to this chart, and 3 tells us that it's cubic. So 3 equals cubic. Okay. Then looking here, in order to do these things, we have to have polynomials in standard form. And all standard form means is that you're writing them in order from greatest to least degree. So we have x to the third, x to the second, x, and just 7. Okay, so once they're in that order, this is one of the most important parts. It actually gives us quite a bit of information about the polynomial. So we're going to call this it's called a leading coefficient. And a coefficient is just a number in front of a variable. Then this is our highest exponent. So this is what we use to classify the degree of monomial. And that's when we use this chart up here that we did. Okay? All right. And the degree of the monomial is simply the highest one. Then we could classify by the degree of the polynomial, because there's 4 of them. And then we could call this the constant, but we'll practice. So what is the degree of this one? Well, it's a 3. So if you look up here, it's cubic. It's a little bit blurry, but there we go. It's cubic. Okay. So then we're just going to go ahead and put them in standard form and name those things. So the highest degree is this, so we're going to put 4x to the 5th plus 3x to the 3rd minus 7x. So we just put them in a different order. Same things are there, same signs. And for this first one, I'm going to actually write the things that we're naming, and then for the next ones, I will we'll come up with shorthand so it's not so hard to write it every time. Degree of monomial. Degree of polynomial. And then the constant. So first, leading coefficient is going to be this one. So we're going to say it's 4. The degree of the monomial would be the 5. So if we look back to our chart, a degree 5 is quintic. So I'll put 5 is quintic. Then the degree of the polynomial is 1, 2, 3. So this is going to be a trinomial. And then a constant, remember, is just a number without a variable. There isn't one here, so we're going to say that there's none. Okay, next one is this one. So the highest degree is 4, so we're going to, and remember that their signs directly in front of the number go with it. So it's a negative 2y to the 4th minus 6y to the 3rd plus 5y minus 9. So now I'm just going to go LC, DOM, DOP, and con. And that will just be our 4 things that we did over here. So the leading coefficient is going to be right here. So it's a negative 2. The degree of the monomial is this 4. So if you look on that chart, a 4 is a quartic, like quarters. The degree of polynomial, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 terms. So anything greater than 3 is just a polynomial. And then the constant is going to be this negative 9. Okay. And on your assignment, it's not necessarily going to ask you all 4 of these at once, but we're doing it for all of them just so that we get practice. So then the next one is, the highest is 4x to the 4th minus 2x to the 2nd minus 3x plus 8. So then we have the leading coefficient, degree of monomial, degree of polynomial, and then the constant. So the leading coefficient is going to be our 4. The degree of monomial is going to be 4. So again, looking at that chart, it's going to again be quartic, like quarters. the degree of the polynomial, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is going to be a polynomial. And then the constant is going to be the 8. And if you want to go ahead and do this one yourself, so you can see if you understand it, then what we're going to do with those polynomials is we're actually going to add them together. So something you need to realize is that you cannot add polynomials that have different exponents. So like 2x to the second can't be put together to 5x because these are completely different things. It's like a label. It's like broccoli and cookies. We can't put those together. So what I do is I come in and I say, all right, I have the highest exponent is 2, so I'll put those together first, and I put little squiggle marks to show myself that's what I'm putting together. So then I say, all right, 2 plus negative 4. Well, 2 plus negative 4 is negative 2, and then the x squared just stays exactly as it is. Then we have positive 5x, and we have positive 6x. So 5 plus a positive 6 is a positive 11x. And then we have negative 7 plus 3, so that is a negative 4. So if we were going to do all those things, the LC, the DOM, the DOP, and the con of this one, we have leading coefficient would be negative 2. The degree of monomial is a 2. This one's probably the trickiest one. This one is actually called a quadratic, and that will be connected to the quadratic formula that we'll be using much later. Okay, and then we have the degree of the polynomial, so there's 1, 2, 3 terms. So this one's going to be a trinomial. And then our constant is going to be our negative 4 that's up here. So I hope that part makes sense. Let's see. Our next one. Okay. I think we're going to skip that one. I think we kind of went over that stuff. Okay, so probably the hardest thing you're going to have to deal with in this section is dealing with when we're subtracting them, because for some reason we have a hard time keeping track of the signs. So this one's a little bit trickier. So our highest degree is this 2. So we're going to look at the 2's. Okay, so then we have 2 minus a positive 3. So that's just a 1x squared. Then we have just these two. This is where kids start to mess up. So we have negative 5 minus, and this is considered a positive 4. So negative 5 minus 4 is actually a negative 9x. And I'm pretty sure most of you thought 1 of some sort. Then we have 3 and positive 5. So we have 3 minus positive 5. So 3 minus 5 is a negative 2. Okay, so if we were to do the LC, it would be 1. The degree would be quadratic. The degree of monomial. Degree of polynomial would be trinomial. And then our constant would be negative 2. Last one that we're going to do together. So this one is about as hard as they get. Okay, so our highest degree is going to be a positive 4p to the third. Well, there's no 4p to the third, or there's no p to the third here. So you can either just ignore it, or you can think to yourself, okay, I can have a 0p to the third. So if I have 4 minus 0, it's still going to be 4p to the third. Then we'll go to the seconds. So this one. Well, this one doesn't have it, so this is the tricky part. So if I had a 0p to the second, if I had a 0 minus 3, that would be a negative 3p squared. Then we're going to do our just regular p's. And I'm going to say probably 95% of my classes got this step wrong. So we have 7 minus a negative 2. So 7 minus a negative is a plus. So 7 plus 9 is a positive 16p. Then we have, I'm out of shapes. There we go. So I have a negative 8 minus 2. So that's going to be a negative 10. So if we were to classify these, it would be the leading coefficient would be 4. Your degree of monomial would be 3, which is cubic. Then degree of polynomial, there's 4 of them, so it's going to be polynomial. And negative 10 is going to be the constant. So the last one I'm going to let you do on your own in your notes. The class has got to do it in the notes, okay? Then, so if you'll put that one in your notes, be extra careful of that subtract. And then the assignment is page 494, number 20 to 43 all, and it seems hard, or it seems like a lot, but it's really not that hard. But please, please, please read your directions. Some of them ask for leading coefficient, some of them ask for classification by degree of monomial, and then degree of polynomial, things like that. So make sure you answer what's actually being asked.